topic of this, subject of this verse. In the midst of a mess. In the midst of a mess. Amen. The book of Psalms, many things we can talk about in that book. The Psalms capture and comprehend the complexity of human life. The influence of the Psalms cannot be reduced to a summary. That does them no justice. The book of Psalms has always been a scriptural book of prayer and praise for the church. The Psalms have been and continue to be recited, sung, chanted, used as responsive readings and hymns. Fractions of the Psalms are used in invocations, adorations, and confessions in liturgy. The language and the function serve as foundations and resources for what is said and done in worship service. Their influence and effect are present in corporate worship. The Psalms are used to nurture and guide personal meditations and devotions. We see in the book of Psalms where our authentic faith comes to expression. Many of the things that we feel, David expresses them in word. The basic theme of Psalms is living real life in the real world. All cycles of human trouble and triumphs provide occasions for expressing human complaints, confident praises unto God. The book of Psalms is used to comfort many times when we're feeling low. That's a book to turn to. Even on the other spectrum, when we are happy or joyful, we can open the book of Psalms. David has been credited with composing at least 73 of the 150 Psalms. And we see in David's background, essentially, we can read about him in Samuel and Kings and in Chronicles. But David was chosen by God and picked by Samuel to be the next king of Israel. In the times that we read about him and his background, David was the runt of the group. He was the little one. He was the youngest one, the one that most people looked over as he tended sheep. But Samuel comes, and we know the story. He identified David as being the one that God chose. Samuel anoints David, which means he was designated to be next in line. While all of this is happening, meanwhile, Saul was the king, but his days were numbered. And there was a point when Saul fell into a deep depression. And coincidentally, they brought David into the palace to play the harp to relieve Saul of his depression. As we many times note the book of Psalms to be songs, praises, many times they are metered songs that one can sing. But David is brought into this palace to play the harp, beautifully to relieve Saul of his depression. Not knowing that young David would replace him. And during the time of David being in the palace, Israel was in constant war with the Philistines. And ultimately, David volunteers to fight Goliath. And we know the outcome. That small runt, the youngest, killed a giant. Saul grows increasingly jealous of David and tries to kill him, and he has to go into hiding. Then we hear about David again. David had a relationship with Bathsheba and ultimately had her husband killed. David had some problems with his sons and may not have been considered the best model of a father. In fact, in 2 Samuel 15, David is fleeing from Absalom, his son. And after reading about the episodes about David in the 1st and 2nd Samuel, we see that David has some flaws. David has some faults. David has some weaknesses. But David was also considered to be a man after God's own heart. I don't know about you, but this gives me some hope. Yeah, even when God knows about my faults and my flaws and my weaknesses, he still loves me. And he still gives me opportunity after opportunity to be used in his kingdom and for his glory. David loved God. And he had faith in God. And he was thankful to God. He was a man after God's own heart. So as we read in the Psalms, time and time again, David cries or laments out to God in despair. We also see that David rejoices in delight. And one of the greatest fallacies held by many is that being a Christian means that life should be suddenly smooth, that struggles will be worked out, storms will be calmed, difficulties will disappear. As we are well aware, and if you are not aware, I'm informing you, that is not correct. In fact, bumps, struggles, storms, and difficulties may intensify. So you may ask, then, what is the difference between a believer and a non-believer? Our response to our troubles is what is different. That's the difference. We're not exempt from the troubles of the world, but how we respond to the trouble is the difference. In the event that you don't like the word mess in the midst of a mess, there are some other terms that can be used. Trouble, problems, hardships, afflictions, perplexing circumstances, pressures, squeezes or tight spots, and pinches. Sometimes we say, oh, I got caught in a pinch. So Paul described troubles in 4 categories. And for those of us that are in our Authentic Christianity book on Wednesday night, it's outlined that Paul describes 4 categories of troubles. The first being afflictions. These are everyday irritations, like an appliance in your house stops working. Your car won't start. Your hot water heater breaks. These are afflictions, irritations that happen within life. Then we have perplexities. these are situations that you just don't know what to do. There are uncertainties in life, and you don't know what to do. You need to make a decision, but the decision is hard. So you are between two opinions. There will be times that we don't know what to do. We won't know what to say. And we won't know why something has happened. Perplexities. Then we have persecutions. For the Christian, you can count on persecutions. These may range from deliberate offenses to small shunnings. Examples would be verbal attacks, physical attacks. The obscure shunnings would be, oh, you're being overlooked due to your race or your gender, ignored due to color, persecutions.